Mark Reynolds never thought one night could change his life, or the lives of an entire town. But when he stole a police cruiser and tore through the streets, chaos followed in his wake, leaving destruction, fear, and a daring escape that no one could forget. It was a quiet, ordinary night in a small town, the kind of night where the streets seemed empty and the air felt heavier than usual. The town's police station, a modest building with flickering lights and an occasional distant siren, stood as the silent guardian of the community. Inside, most officers were focused on routine paperwork, reports, or monitoring cameras, unaware that an audacious crime was about to unfold right under their noses. The man had been watching the station for weeks, studying the guards' schedules, the patrol patterns, and the gaps in security. He was not just impulsive, he was methodical, calculating, and coldly determined. When the moment came, he slipped through the shadows like a ghost, moving past parked patrol cars with a quiet confidence that made it almost seem unreal. Cameras would later reveal the surreal image of a lone figure walking past a fleet of marked vehicles, as if invisible, until he reached the car that would change everything. The vehicle he chose was one of the newest in the fleet, a marked police cruiser equipped with sirens, flashing lights, and a powerful engine. To anyone else, it would have seemed like a symbol of authority and law, but to him, it was a key to freedom and chaos. He slid into the driver's seat, the cold metal of the steering wheel pressing against his palms, and started the engine. The quiet hum of the car echoed through the otherwise still station. It was the sound of danger beginning to take shape. For a few fleeting moments, nothing happened. It almost seemed like the world had paused, holding its breath, waiting to see what would come next. Then, with a sudden push, he drove the cruiser past the entrance and onto the empty streets. The tires screeched slightly as they gripped the asphalt, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness of the night. Inside the station, officers were only beginning to notice the missing car, confusion spreading quickly as alarms began to blare. The man was gone, and with him, the sense of security in the town evaporated. No one knew where he was heading, and the questions started to pile up almost immediately. Was this a simple joyride? A desperate escape? Or something far more sinister? The stolen cruiser carried more than just a powerful engine. It held radios connected to the entire police network, lights capable of commanding respect and fear, and an authority that could manipulate the reactions of anyone on the road. For a moment, it seemed as if the man had stepped into a new identity, one that blurred the line between criminal and law enforcement. As he drove through the dark streets, the man's focus was absolute. Every turn, every stoplight, every empty stretch of road was a calculated decision. The quiet night had given him an opportunity few would ever dare to take, and he had seized it fully. In that moment, the town felt smaller, more vulnerable, as though the very heart of its safety had been ripped away. The stolen police cruiser moved like a dark omen on the roads, signaling that nothing in that quiet town would ever be the same again. As soon as the stolen cruiser was reported missing, the small town erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled, radios crackling with urgent messages, lights flashing in hurried patterns across the station. The first to respond was a state trooper patrolling a nearby highway. From a distance, he spotted the familiar shape of the marked cruiser moving at an unusual speed, weaving in and out of the dimly lit streets. It was immediately clear this was no ordinary thief. This was someone willing to risk everything to escape, and he had the audacity to do it in a vehicle meant to enforce the law. The chase began quietly at first, almost imperceptibly. The man drove with precision, keeping his eyes on the road while calculating every turn. Traffic was sparse, giving him room to push the stolen cruiser to its limits. He ignored stop signs and red lights, cutting through intersections with terrifying confidence. Each maneuver was daring, but there was a method to his recklessness. Every movement seemed carefully planned to stay ahead of the pursuing officers while minimizing his own exposure. As the highway opened up, the pursuit intensified. The state trooper activated lights and sirens, signaling the start of a dangerous chase that would soon draw attention from multiple departments. The man accelerated, the cruiser responding with a roar that echoed across the asphalt. Vehicles on the highway swerved to avoid him, some barely escaping collisions. Civilians screamed and ducked as the car streaked past, leaving a trail of fear in its wake. It became clear that the man was not just running. He was testing the limits of both his nerve and the vehicle he had stolen. Authorities struggled to anticipate his next move. He darted in and out of exits, taking routes that officers hadn't yet blocked. His knowledge of the town and surrounding areas gave him an edge that was both frustrating and alarming. It was as if he had spent months memorizing every shortcut, every alley, and every empty lot that could give him a momentary advantage. The pursuit became a dangerous cat-and-mouse game, each side trying to predict the other's actions. Tension escalated with every passing second. The cruiser's sirens wailed against the night air, mixing with the occasional distant crash of a vehicle narrowly avoided. Officers communicated through radios, coordinating roadblocks and warning nearby drivers, but the man seemed always one step ahead. The state trooper pushing his vehicle to the limit felt the adrenaline surge through his veins, realizing that this chase was unlike any he had experienced. Every turn brought new danger, every acceleration could lead to disaster, and yet the man drove as though controlled by some unseen force, fearless in the face of law enforcement and consequences. The chase was no longer about a stolen car. It had become a test of nerve, skill, and endurance. The night, once quiet and ordinary, now held a dangerous tension that gripped the entire town. The man behind the wheel was a phantom on the road, unstoppable and unpredictable, and every second brought the terrifying possibility of disaster. For those watching from the sidelines, the streets had become a stage for a high-stakes drama, one that none could predict how it would end. Just when it seemed the chase had reached its peak, the man behind the wheel took an unexpected turn. Highway lights disappeared in the distance as he veered sharply into an industrial district. Abandoned warehouses and empty lots stretched for blocks, their shadows blending into the night. Officers following him hesitated for a split second, unsure of the terrain ahead. The streets were narrow, littered with debris and filled with hidden obstacles. It was a perfect place for someone who knew the area intimately to exploit every advantage. Surveillance cameras mounted on buildings would later capture the scene. The cruiser moving like a phantom, its sirens echoing faintly against the walls of long-forgotten factories. The man's driving had shifted from reckless speed to a calculated precision. He weaved through tight corners and avoided construction barriers with near-perfect timing. Every maneuver seemed intentional, as if he had pre-planned an escape route designed to confuse, delay, and outsmart law enforcement. Officers struggled to maintain pace, their vehicles larger and less maneuverable, their attempts to close the gap frustratingly slow. Then came a twist no one could have predicted. Without warning, the man slowed the stolen cruiser near a deserted construction site. For a fleeting moment, it appeared as if he might surrender or reconsider his choices. The troopers caught up, brakes squealing and hearts racing. It was a tense pause, a calm before the storm. But the silence was deceptive. Almost instantly he accelerated, sending the cruiser barreling toward a parked state trooper car that had been positioned as a precaution. The impact was sudden and violent. Metal crumpled, glass shattered, and debris exploded in every direction. The force of the collision was enough to flip both vehicles, throwing them onto their sides and leaving a chaotic scene of wreckage in the middle of the deserted lot. Officers nearby were thrown into a scramble, some injured, some barely avoiding harm. The town's quiet industrial district had transformed into a scene of chaos and destruction, a stark contrast to its usual emptiness. Emergency lights reflected off broken windows, casting the aftermath in flashes of red and blue. The stolen cruiser, finally immobilized, sat like a twisted monument to the man's audacity and skill. Smoke rose from crumpled metal, and the air was filled with the acrid scent of burning rubber and shattered glass. What shocked everyone most was the man's sudden disappearance from the wreckage. No one saw him leave, no tracks were immediately obvious, and the cruiser IS controls showed no signs of an attempt to flee on foot, yet he had vanished. It was as if he had melted into the shadows, leaving only the aftermath of his recklessness behind. Investigators would later speculate that he had used an underground tunnel or an unmarked back alley to slip away. But at that moment, the town was left in disbelief. How could one man in a stolen vehicle create so much destruction and simply vanish? The industrial district, once silent, now echoed with the distant wail of sirens and the murmurs of stunned officers. The chase had escalated beyond mere theft. It had become a spectacle of unpredictability, cunning, and danger. The night had shifted from a routine patrol into a nightmare, leaving everyone involved questioning how such a daring, calculated act could occur in their quiet town. The chaos of the collision had barely settled when authorities realized the man was nowhere to be found. The abandoned cruiser, twisted and smoking, seemed to mock them, a silent testament to his audacity. Officers combed the surrounding area, flashlights cutting through the darkness, but it was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Panic began to spread through the ranks, replaced slowly by a grim determination to track him down. What kind of person could orchestrate such a dangerous act and vanish so completely? Investigators delved into the man's past, piecing together fragments of his life from records, witnesses, and prior offenses. The more they uncovered, the more unnerving the picture became. He had a history of petty thefts and high-speed chases, but nothing of this magnitude. He was clever, methodical, and increasingly unpredictable. Each minor offense in his past now seemed like a rehearsal for the night's audacious crime. It became evident that he had studied law enforcement patterns closely, understanding how officers responded in different situations. Every maneuver during the chase reflected a knowledge that went beyond instinct. It was strategy. As news of the chase and collision spread, the town became gripped by a mix of fear and fascination. Residents poured out onto the streets, watching as law enforcement set up barricades and coordinated searches. The stolen cruiser, now in a police impound lot, was a stark reminder of how close disaster had come. Officials realized that the man's ability to anticipate their movements had made him not just a thief, but a master of chaos. He had turned a routine night into a high-stakes puzzle that no one could solve in time. The investigation revealed more unsettling details. Surveillance footage showed the man moving with purpose through alleyways, construction zones, and even private properties during the chase. Witnesses reported glimpses of him sprinting through shadows, disappearing into spaces that seemed inaccessible. His knowledge of the town was almost preternatural, allowing him to exploit gaps in police coverage that would have been invisible to anyone else. Officers were forced to consider that he might have scouted these routes for weeks, preparing meticulously for the moment when opportunity and audacity would align. Authorities were left with the chilling realization that the man's crime was more than an impulsive act. It was a carefully calculated plan that combined skill, timing, and courage bordering on recklessness. The collision with the state trooper's car had been unexpected, but it was also inevitable given the trajectory of his actions. In the days following, investigators pieced together his escape routes, uncovering abandoned warehouses and hidden alleys he had used to slip away undetected. The town was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that one individual, armed with knowledge, boldness, and a stolen vehicle, could disrupt an entire system of law and order. By the time he was finally located days later, the man had become a figure of both fear and fascination. Law enforcement and civilians alike were left to ponder the audacity, planning, and sheer recklessness that had characterized his crime. The investigation, while ultimately successful, highlighted vulnerabilities, raising questions about preparedness, anticipation, and the thin line between control and chaos in the hands of someone who knows exactly how to exploit it. Days passed after the collision, and the town remained on edge. Residents could still feel the echoes of that night, the screech of tires, the crash of metal, and the piercing wail of sirens. Law enforcement had deployed every available resource in a massive manhunt, scouring the city, the surrounding forests, and abandoned industrial zones. The man's ability to disappear had frustrated officers at every turn, leaving them with more questions than answers. It was as if he had vanished from existence, leaving only a trail of chaos and uncertainty behind him. Finally, a breakthrough came when a surveillance camera in a secluded warehouse district captured a glimpse of him slipping through a partially open door. Officers converged on the location cautiously, aware that the man was unpredictable and potentially dangerous. The tension in the air was palpable, every footstep echoing through the empty halls as the search narrowed. He was discovered hiding among crates and broken machinery, injured and exhausted from days on the run, yet still defiant in his determination to evade capture. Despite his condition, he offered no resistance. The arrest was swift, and for the first time in days, the town could breathe. The investigation that followed revealed shocking details about the man's planning and motives. He had studied the police station's routines meticulously, knew the patrol routes by heart, and had anticipated the timing of roadblocks. Each decision he made during the chase had been calculated, every risk weighed with precision. What had seemed like random chaos was, in reality, a carefully orchestrated sequence of events designed to maximize both thrill and escape. The collision with the state trooper's vehicle, while not planned, became a pivotal moment that showcased both his recklessness and his skill. The trooper who had been involved in the crash survived, though the experience left physical and emotional scars. The town rallied around the officer, whose bravery and quick thinking had prevented an even greater disaster. For the residents, the event was a stark reminder that danger could appear in the most ordinary places, that life could be disrupted in a matter of minutes by someone who understood how to manipulate the system. Authorities also examined the stolen cruiser, the centerpiece of the entire ordeal. It had been outfitted with radios, sirens, and lights that the man had used to create confusion and assert temporary authority. The vehicle itself became a symbol of the thin line between order and chaos, showing how ordinary tools of law enforcement could be turned into instruments of danger in the hands of someone clever and audacious. In the weeks that followed, the man's story became a cautionary tale, told repeatedly in news reports, social media posts, and community meetings. He had pushed the limits of both the law and human audacity, leaving a trail of destruction and fear, but also a story that fascinated the public. The town slowly returned to normal, but the memory of that night lingered, a reminder of how quickly safety could be shattered and how resilience, vigilance, and courage could make the difference between disaster and survival. In the end, the stolen cruiser, the high-speed chase, and the vanishing act became more than just a headline. They became a story of recklessness, planning, and the thin line separating law from lawlessness.